And then I just threw it in the cart. Forget it.
Oh, do you want that? Do you want the book back?
It said no, because it said I was supposed to let you know if there's any other policies.
You gave them. We've got them all. Yeah, he was just going to do a few of them this time, and then not list them all this time. Yeah. Okay.
You give it back to the next week.
Yep, you betcha.
Coldest night of the season already. Yeah, the coldest night of the season. Not worried when it gets below 20. Everything that I can get ready for is kind of free. Like we're not.
went gloomy here. So I was watching the news. They said with the wind chill, it's like 17 degrees. Yeah.
I know when I had to pump gas. Oh, I could have done it yesterday.
Yeah. I think tomorrow, cold and it's not going to be. Looks like.
Oh, so how's school going for your daughter?
Seems like good. She was just home
Oh, she was.
Saturday to Sunday
Okay.
for the musical.
Okay.
My sister. She's like starting to pick her classes for next semester.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. This was her first time home, and she was talking to somebody about this one. The first time they come home, they're kind of like not
Not
really
really sure. Not really sure.
Not really sure where they fit in.
Yeah.
Because she was just kind of unsure.
Oh, watch out.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then
that's
she
huge.
was glad that she would find.
Oh, okay.
Lights are on.
Which is so
Yeah.
Why is that? Is that like your preference or something?
They both were actually cold now. He can go to hospital. Second prescription. He actually graduates in December. And Christopher, then he was first. He knew it wasn't too bad for him because he actually went to two other guys from here, and then another guy, and really good friends from here, and then another guy from Clintonville. So that kind of all went really good. But I know quite a few people who actually received their UWG his first year because he was and he got along, but they just didn't have like the same interests, you know. So it wasn't for him, and then he switched to him. So it was like the same semester. On campus?
Yeah, I have your own. And then there's like a girl next to you. So she was all excited. And now she's talking about this one person. Just there's like easy skills and games.
Weyauwega Fremont Board of Education committee the whole meeting in order on Monday, November 11, 2013 at 6:30 p.m. in the Weyauwega Fremont Middle School IMC. Roll call and establish quorum.
Neil Lurkey.
Here.
Sandy Smith. Here. Doug Amber.
Here.
Debbie Bartle.
Here.
Dan Cole.
The meeting was properly notified. Everyone listened to roll call.
Yep.
Board policy in service. 4A policy series 300 series.
As discussed at the October committee meeting, we're going to move into the 300 series for some initial review of some policies. Sandy brought forward some policies to look at internally in our office, and she pointed out some items for consideration. 4 policies in front of you tonight deal with the school calendar, the school day, curriculum development, and the guidelines for purchase and rental of musical instruments. You want to just dive right into first one, the school calendar. It talks about the development of the school calendar and the practice that had been used, and the references, Weyauwega Fremont Association bargaining unit through that process. And now through bargaining, there's 3 items in which typically we can bargain over. That's length of contract-based wage and disbursements of salary. So I feel that this isn't accurate as stated, that the board would approve the school calendar as brought forward for recommendation. And then also noted the cross-reference that it does not align with the agreement because it is not a bargaining item as far as negotiation. So those 2 potential items to be considered for updating. Okay.
I think policy calendar 321 and policy school day 322 are very similar now to where they were before. So I had blended the wording for both of them for consideration. The second one says the board shall establish. So on the first one, you started with that word. The board shall establish the school calendar, period, to meet at a minimum to state law requirements. And then, again, it's a blending of both of them. In establishing a school calendar, the board may consider comments from administrators, staff, and parents and students. That was my way of thinking on it. I think the board should be involved in both the development and the approval of it. The second sentence of the school calendar one, I take that back. There's 2 on that. I got too many notes. That was about what I was. That was my way of talking about it. The second one on school day and or for school calendar, whether this is here or in the handbook, I would consider that the administration and building principals, as it says on, where am I seeing that? Okay, on the 3rd paragraph of school day. I took some of that paragraph. The administrator and building principal shall closely monitor and record or track all staff attendance and absenteeism. And maybe that's already being done. But I think both on the calendar side and the school day side, that is something that I would suggest is tracked like the 3rd paragraph of school day and monitored. So we can see whether or not the handbook is being followed.
On the school day, when it references compliance, was that directed at staff or students or both, or what?
Monitor compliance of school day is in relationship to the number of days and the time frame within 8 o'clock, 3 o'clock, complying within our established time frame. The school calendar references the 180 regular days. By law, we have to meet within that, but I believe it's referencing the schedule of hours that we are in. That's my interpretation of it.
So it's not necessarily referencing people actually being here, just the fact that the school is open.
That's right. Neil, your thoughts may be part of when we get to the employee part of it.
Yeah, I think it's in the handbook, but just
right.
Whether or not this is addressing that attendance issue or not.
I think this is intended to address the actual physical day itself from 8 to 3. I guess that's how I interpret it, unless it's not to be interpreted as that.
And with the first one having references to the association, and if that's removed, it could be very likely, I think you could blend both of these policies into one, calendar, school day. It's now no longer being separated because of that need to negotiate.
Right. There are some options there. Board can dictate as to what that would look like. Do you have a draft copy written if you want to give it to us?
You wouldn't be able to read my Sterling.
If
And based on which way the discussion was going tonight,
Sure.
I certainly could.
right, and you don't settle these out in one meeting typically. If you would want to forward that in writing, we could have that ready for the December meeting to look at.
And you know, with any more discussion on it tonight, you know, which direction the board's looking that way, if you want to blend them together.
I don't mind blending them together. The one thing that I would question is whether or not we need to be involved in the development of the calendar and the school day. I mean, why not just take what is given to us by the administrators and discuss it, approve it, whatever. I just don't see that we need to get involved in all the day-to-day kind of stuff like that.
Bring it forward and have a committee meeting, and then we look at it, and if the majority of us don't like it, then.
What we need to do.
Yeah.
They grant forward, and that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it,
I mean,
We
you know,
don't.
But the
said
school-
there.
the School day, is that made basically because of the compliance with the state laws? Is that why that's in there? Basically? That's basically why it's in there.
Right, yeah, it's with the legal reference of what we have to do, you know, as far as days and minutes with that.
What's the difference?
They do seem a little redundant, I agree.
But I mean, that's the only reason it's in there, because we have to abide by EPI statute, so. That's basically why it's in there.
I want to make one number and one policy, so we.
Yeah.
You want to take the time?
I'd be happy to draft something up and
Draft something up.
talk about it later.
Just have, when you're looking at it, if you're pulling from both times and both bits, the legal references would probably have to meet both of them, just, you know, as a subnote, you know, how they have, legal reference on the bottom, they would have to state both
Yes,
of the,
you know,
both
I'd give a
items.
call to Weyauwega if there's a good, is there a justification for them being separate? Maybe there is.
Yeah.
There might be something on this.
All right, just, let Don or I know, and we'll bring it forward at the next meeting. Policy 330 addresses curriculum development, and it had recognized the curriculum committee, which has been part of our structure as committees, where we broke them out into subgroups. But for the past, since my tenure, we've been meeting as a committee as a whole. If we wanted to reflect what we're currently doing, I'd recommend consideration of committee as a whole when we talk about curriculum and curriculum updates. And again, striking of the negotiated agreement necessarily wouldn't apply.
My review of that takes the third paragraph, starting with all programs, subject area of when it gets to reviewed by the, I added boards, reviewed by the board's curriculum committee or committee of the whole. So that in the event the committee of the whole changes, we wouldn't have to instantly change this one back again either. It leaves it both ways, is one thought I had. Reviewed by the board's curriculum committee or committee of the whole and approved by the board, is how I worded that paragraph.
Okay.
Because there's no assurance that the curriculum committee will be a committee or a committee of the whole. Currently, it's committee of the whole, but I've been here when it's been both. And if it did go back, we wouldn't have to instantly change this one again. And I could draft that up if you want to have my word.
I think I might have it down, reviewed by the board, curriculum committee.
Reviewed by the boards, meaning plural, boards, ownership, possessive, that's the word. I'm not English. The board's curriculum committee or committee of the whole.
Okay, so the boards and that board is what we're adding into that.
And approved by the board. Because just the committee, if it is a small group of, in the future, that should not make the decision. I think the board should make the decision.
Board
So,
always.
in the event it happened to go to a curriculum committee of 2 or 3 people, they're the only people that see it, I think we should add that the board approves it after it gets out of that committee.
Okay, so here's the staff edit here. All programs, subject area offerings, and any additions or deletions to the curriculum shall be reviewed by the board's curriculum committee or committee of the whole and be approved by the board. That's all right.
That's, you've added the word be, but that's okay.
Okay.
You've added the word be or and be approved by the board is fine. I didn't have be in mind.
Any other feedback on curriculum development? Again, we'll make this revision for an updated look moving forward. The fourth one deals with guidelines for purchase and rental of musical instruments, and highlighted in yellow and uniform. I think it should be noted that we should recognize within our policy and act something that has been taking place, a rental fee for our band uniforms. Recently with our new uniforms, maintaining the upkeep and keeping them in sound condition. So I'd look to add number 6, annual marching band uniforms fee may be recognized to maintain uniform upkeep. I think that's in line with other ideas and philosophies within our district. Students that participate in other co-curriculars or extracurriculars, if there's an activity involved, they usually pay a fee or a stipend for equipment and whatnot that would go along with that. The marching band uniforms are an investment, and graciously the board supported buying out, purchasing the second half of the uniform last fall. I think it would be appropriate to recognize that.
I have a question about the instruments. After the annual meeting, I was approached by some people, and is there a schedule or a plan for replacing instruments over time? They were complaining about the shape that they were in.
Sure. You typically, I don't know if there's a schedule of replacement within the curriculum areas through the budgeting process. In my experience, is that if there's a need for something and it works its way through that budgeting, hey, I need a new whatever this is, and it's justified, and we can work it into the budget, and then it's put through that process. Typically, that comes from the classroom teacher's recommendation, unless there's some type of oversight from an administrator or individual says, hey, you need this, to improve your classroom environment. So I would see that coming from that classroom instructor if there is a need to replace that process. I'm not familiar with the rotation or replacing the equipment. I know they maintain the equipment through repairs, and some of that equipment is older, but it is being able to maintain. I know at the 6th grade concert that my daughter was in, Mr. Schmidt had a tuba that looked like it got ran over.
That's exactly the words they used.
and I don't know if that was more of a showpiece heirloom or if that was the actual, okay, this is what we have, because I've seen other tuba players, present quality pieces of equipment. So I don't have the history on that heirloom, I'll call it. Mr. Schrader, that might be something to inquire about with that, because I actually noticed that. I mean, it was brown. There was no metallic sheet to it at all. Right.
Yep.
So, but sometimes those relics come back with their the nostalgia that they present as well. So,
in my reading of this, under number 1, I don't think that the school district can force someone to purchase an instrument, because I think there's an option to rent. And I think number 1 should include for rent up there. Number 3, I don't know how that works out. I guess I'd like some feedback from Mr. Schmidt and or parents or students in the band. If I own an old trumpet, but I would like to take something else, that means the school has to provide it to me, the way I read number 3. And it's just kind of bizarre.
Well, a lot of times they do.
Well, I guess I don't know. Do they or don't they? How often is number 3 happening?
Not very often.
I know my daughter, when she got braces, my oldest, she had to switch from one instrument to another, just because she couldn't play
But I guess I'm
anymore?
not sure how that's interpreted, you know, it's like, well, yeah, I've got something else at home
Sure.
and now I don't, you have to provide me with. Other questions I have is, how many instruments does the school have? What kind of itinerary do we have? What do we own, what do we not own? We list the ones that they have to purchase or rent. Could we list the ones they don't have to purchase and rent for clarity? I think that would be helpful to me.
I don't think they have to buy any of them.
Right, but line one says purchase their own. I think that should say purchase or rent. And
Like when my
that's
daughter was here, she bought her own food. My son stayed there.
Wait, two. Yeah.
So you're gonna have to buy food. But she bought her own food.
Right, they have a list of the ones that the school
I
doesn't
think it's up to
provide.
them. You can buy it or you don't have to buy it.
I think it'd be interesting to have a list of what the school will provide, be it the tuba or the percussion.
It's what's up.
See, for me, number 3, I don't know how this works either, would be that you sign up for a band that you're going to play something, and you have the instrument, and then the teacher comes and says, no, I want you to sing. You're right, we don't have a band.
Right, the way I read it, it says, oh yeah, at home I got an old clarinet, you know.
And I read it,
I wanna play
signed
trumpet.
up to play the clarinet, but then the teacher says, well, you better, I don't know, we should have some clarinet.
And I think Mr. Schmidt and/or some band parents would help us if we're not making any changes to this document. And I'm sure there's a bunch of band booster people that would want to participate in these rules. Policy, whatever we call it. I know I'm not an expert at this. I think Mr. Schmidt and/or some parents would be helpful.
So some follow-up on the recommendation process of how one is asked to play a different instrument, and then a list of our current school-owned equipment.
Right. Are we growing or shrinking our current inventory of instruments? You know, where was it 5 years ago? Where is it now? Are we offering enough? Is there enough available for our students?
We can do some follow-up on that. Any other?
Regarding that uniform fee,
Sure.
I know somebody was grumbling about that at one point, and I just did some really quick research and just checked a couple other schools.
Sure.
Kimberly High School does not. I don't see that they have a uniform fee, but they, you have to buy a T-shirt and a CD for concert band, which is marching band. Appleton School District, they say rental, annual upkeep, and/or purchase of apparel are associated with most music courses, and you have to check with the instructor to find out specific costs, so I couldn't find what that was. And Kokana had a $10 class fee, which I don't know what that covers. Maybe it covers band. So I don't think it's out of line to charge $15, is I guess what I was saying. You know, it seems like other schools do charge a fee. Well, except for Kimberly. Kimberly didn't have anything, so I don't know what their deal is. But like I said, I just checked a couple of them really quickly. And maybe I'm checking the wrong place because I was checking in the Valley, and maybe I should check in Animal and other ones. But
I would assume it would be similar in nature.
I mean, you got it. Dry clean them and
Right.
keep them up and all that. I can see where there's cost involved with having nice uniforms. So.
And
You just bought it.
we did over the past 3 years, we now have new uniforms, marching uniforms, concert uniforms. Prior to that, the concert and marching uniforms spanned 20 plus years with the old ones. And a credit to people prior that kept it going that long, and I think that's definitely an intent as well to maintain them as long as we can, or until there's a need to upgrade again.
Do you know if there is an inventory of our band instruments?
I believe there is.
Has it been growing or shrinking? I'm getting feedback that it's been shrinking. I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't have the answer to that if it's growing.
But if we're having less and less instruments available for our students, if that's true, I'd be curious as to why.
Yeah, but big pipes coming in, Henry comes in.
My daughter's in.
We don't really own them. They come and rent them from somebody, right?
The district does own some.
Some, right.
Right.
But otherwise they rent from private.
The
companies.
students will set up a contract with a music company if they want to rent to own, or purchase outright.
Or they do just have to pay the tuba and percussion.
We have select instruments that people probably may not purchase, a xylophone, kettle drum.
I mean, most of the clarinets, trombone, stuff like that, I think they rent from.
Right,
My
rent
kids
or
had
own.
it years ago.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they have.
An investment of, not to say obscure, but singletons, a drum set might be quite costly. I don't know the cost of those.
I guess we probably don't have any corporate stuff. Smaller stuff we rent from. We always get.
Mr. Schrader will follow up with Mr. Schmidt on.
Just some logistics.
Yep.
Student A forgets their instrument today, is there one they can grab and still go to practice or not? I don't know what. Mr. Schmidt probably has the answers to this, or I'd hear some parents.
Yep.
Should be helpful.
Okay. Okay. We'll work on the feedback given and bring those forward at the December committee meeting for additional review.
By bringing improvements in welfare by safe routes schools.
Yep. For review, annually, the City of Weyauwega Police Department, I asked them to address the walking routes, school safety routes within the city. And this year, Chief Coltrack identified 6 areas that he would consider call at-risk areas due to traffic volume, particularly in the AM and in the PM when students are making their way to school and making their way back home, our city walkers. You can read through the 6 different areas and maybe picture in your mind where they are throughout. A conversation which I have had more than once with community members within addressing this topic are potential school bus pickups within the city of Weyauwega. And one may think we're not large enough or big enough or not obligated by law to have school bus pickups within city limits, which is within so many miles of the buildings. But it is something to look at. The area that I'm most concerned about, out in your neck of the woods there, going down Highway F.
Which one? Is that number 4? Is that where they're listing that one? Or that seems to be Pine Street, County F?
Right, when we're heading
Well, they call it
out.
Alfred Street there.
That's F and L.
Right.
Okay.
In the city, it's Alfred Street.
Out in front of our trailer park residence, which is part of the city, that there is no accessible sidewalk traffic routes for students to make their way to our campus. And many students are walking the side of the road, probably cutting through your backyard, and making a route to school. Particularly in the spring, the traffic on F is tremendous. And I think we've been very fortunate in to have avoided accidents out there.
FYI. From Lincoln Street east, which is Alfred Street and out, that's being redone next summer with sidewalk.
Okay. How far?
The trailer park.
Oh, it is?
So check with the city before we
Yeah,
overreact in this one.
Sure.
So from the trailer court, they're going to get to Lincoln Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe from Lincoln Street, there's going to be a sidewalk on Leschke's property and the one on Alfred Street, I can't remember the name,
Sure.
to the Catholic Church one.
Okay.
Because that's been in the works for a couple of years.
Okay.
And I was watching it because whether the sidewalk was on Leschke's side or my side makes a difference.
Absolutely.
So
I could appreciate
they
that.
were telling me that it was going to be on the north side of Alfred
Okay.
and on the west side of Lincoln.
That would definitely alleviate some of that stress if that were.
I thought it was going to be done this summer, but last I heard it's going to be next summer.
And I bet that the county would maintain F there, so that's going to be part of
The
the
county and the city are
project.
sharing some of the costs
Yeah.
because it's county and Alfred.
Right. Okay. Well, I can follow up with Administrator Wetzel on that piece of the puzzle. The other 2 areas that are of concern are students when they're crossing the Pine Street coming in off the hill from the south and over on X and by the Lutheran school. It does get congested in those areas. And I have personally fielded some phone calls from parents about the safety of, can we have crossing guards? Can we do something additional to get our young children to and from school? And I said, well, we can bring it up for discussion. Very preliminary. I've talked with some individuals about establishing potential bus sites, 2 bus sites within the city. And this is something that wouldn't just be our authorization. This would take some potential work with the city as well, because they would have to recognize the designation, have to maintain the designation, ensure that it's a safe spot, and be accessible, to the community members around that area. I guess I'm looking for feedback from the board tonight. If we were to look, if I were to approach Mr. Patrick Wetzel, the city administrator, with more of a detailed conversation of 2 areas, I'm thinking around the public library, and then again on the north side of the lake here, in that Peterson Park area, off to the over the lake, take a left there. There's a little shelter, indentation cut out of the road that could potentially support the students from the north side of town, and more of a central location pick up within the city over by the library. Just gave you some feedback.
Logistically, we unload children at the Lutheran school, do we not?
We drop off there. We drop off.
Could that be also a pickup for the ones coming from the public?
That would be a conversation with Principal Miller.
We're there, we're stopped, some get off, some get on, going to the public school.
Yeah. Potential. We'd have to check out their willingness to, what it comes down to, quite often is the supervision of students, at that time, and whether and willing they be willing to take on that responsibility.
Yeah, more students
it
to
takes
their
on more of a
location.
supervision piece when nobody's there. Now somebody may be there waiting to be picked up within that. I know in my one conversation, a parent offered their property front as a pickup point, and I said, well, I appreciate that. I said that, what if you move? What if your child no longer goes to school here? What if a student makes a poor decision and does some damage to your property? I said, I don't think that would be a nice gesture. I don't think that'd be best practice. We need to find a common ground that's city-owned that will support the students in a semi-supervised area. And obviously, our local city officials would have to be on board with this as well, from their perspective.
What is the state law? 2 miles?
City, within the city's limits, I can't tell you the exact distance of it. In our city within, it's Clark Street, I believe, up on the south side of town, is the border line, which is actually, one side is in, the other side is out, and that's where the majority of some of our field calls come.
So it's probably not a 2 mile enforced from Weyauwega, it's likely city limits.
What's that?
I think it's
City
city limits.
limits.
Except in Fremont because of the highway.
And it comes down to state aid, out of city limits, or not state aid.
Excuse me, I just want to say, I'm not sure if you can check. If the police department declares it an unsafe area, I believe we do, and I know state money is still our money. I do believe that do receive state aid. You can check on that.
I think generally it's 2 miles unless it's determined a hazardous area.
Right? That's my understanding.
But Weyauwega isn't working on 2 miles because I think the school district has to be within the city limits. The school district is. So it's only the city limits that we don't bust. Correct.
Right.
It's not 2 miles because 2 miles would include the trailer court.
Yeah, it would. My residence is about 3/4 of a mile.
Let's move on. Look into it.
Bring forward, all right?
But look
City?
into that
Yes,
part,
okay.
Scott, because
Okay.
I believe they do pay
Right.
it.
But the Lutheran school, I don't think that would work. You got critical costs and
All over.
acts. And you got no trucks, that's their truck route.
Yep, that's
You
one
don't
of
want
the areas
to
recognized like
State
street.
110.
Yeah. So look at it.
But do check into that. I believe that if the police declare it unsafe, then you get state aid.
Okay. All right, I will continue that conversation or strike it up with a little greater detail with Mr. Wetzel.
CADR identification.
Just a follow-up from our CADR process, where we're at the October meeting, Kenny Martin and Lynn Ponto, Mike Hansen talked about some science classes that they would like to add to our course description catalog, which will be taking place here in December, getting ready, as well as a personal wellness class presented by Mrs. Tomaszewski to support further health and wellness initiatives. We wanted to give an opportunity for the board, now that it's been processed through, if there were any additional questions. on these two classes that we're recommending to come forward. Just a little further detail, Kenny and I and Jeremy met with the science department this last week and further discussed the potential timeline and what that would look like if this class were to move through. We'd look at rolling in or grandfathering in the process that next year's sophomores would be obligated to take the earth science and science issues class before graduation. Next year, juniors and seniors would be exempt from the process, noting the course loads that they would be anticipating taking and the expectations what they would be taking in their senior year. So next year's sophomores class would be required to work this in their schedule. The personal wellness class is an elective. It would be only student interest on numbers of the students in the class if that would run on a semester basis. And again, just to support the intent of this class, why this is coming about through the next generation of science standards, which we are obligated to address and follow through on to meet that and ensure that our students are having that exposure. We confidently feel that our students will have that experience with the addition of these two classes built into their high school curriculum. Both classes are a semester class, and typical attainment of the credit of the class would take place around that junior year, with exceptions both beforehand for our accelerated learners and with exceptions to our remedial learners that may see it as an option as either a freshman or senior level class. Candy, was there any other feedback points that addressed that since our last meeting? Okay. Comments from board members?
I'm all for adding more science courses.
Okay.
The personal wellness, the current teacher of that has openings in her day to put one more course in?
It would be an elective. So she currently has another elective, senior lifetime sports, and depending on the interest level and which one outweighs the other.
My question is, does she get another hour in a day, or is she replacing this by deleting something else?
You know, I don't know if Mrs. T has a study hall this time or not. She does. Okay.
She teaches a study hall, so a different teacher would be assigned to cover her study hall time if you're up to date with teachers.
This would be a semester basis as well, so not a year-long semester.
I didn't know that it needs to be a separate title and a separate class. I assume personal wellness was included in most all bias courses.
Well, components of it are. It's an extension of it. So we'd look to bring this forward at the end of the month here for personal or recommendation, and then Candy would take this to Joanne Miller, and we'd have it be an option for this break. Any other feedback?
Yeah, you could tell us what CADR means.
CADR, course addition, deletion, and revision is board policy 333.1 that we need to follow whenever we add or delete or change the class and course description.
One more time slower.
Course addition, deletion, and revision, board policy 333.1.
My Google said it was college academic distribution requirements. So I didn't believe that.
I see textbook adoption is her request.
Great, thank you. At our October committee meeting, we touched briefly on this with our science staff and talking about the two recommendations that would potentially be coming through with the CADR process. Mrs. Martin recognized that 9-12 science curriculum update was scheduled for this year, and as in the past, her, Candy Martin, and Mr. Schrader and the science team will do a tireless job investigating the best resources out there for our students. And we would ask the board to recognize the bid waiving process. Not that we will only settle on or bring in just one vendor to go with. We're going to still investigate multiple vendors with multiple resources. But when the dust settles, the recommendation that they would bring forward would be the item that we'd look for board approval. We would not go through the RFP process for this, but yes, it will exceed the $10,000 mark. So looking for that waiver request, which would come forward at the end of the month to formally recognize this person. And ultimately, this would come forward, I'm guessing, in the month of March or April, when the process of evaluating the text is complete. So setting the stage for what will come forward later.
How do you request for bids from different vendors
any feedback, comments on this?
This is just probably, kind of a dumb question. At what point do you start looking into not having textbooks and getting into more technology? I mean,
Sure.
The textbooks come with an online component to it, so the teacher smartboards and the iPads, all of the items that are in the textbooks are links. So for example, if a student is gone for a week on a family vacation or something like that, the teacher can assign them those links and they can go home and watch it at home. It's called Ed Connects, so that they would actually see a virtual teacher instructing the lesson plan and be able to be caught up with the content.
I guess I'm thinking more, I read about school districts
One or
around.
two days?
Yeah, going like with iPads and things like that rather than paper.
Right.
What?
Our textbooks that we've been purchasing in the last several years absolutely have that component. Our experience has been if the teachers want to leave the building, for example, in science, they're frequently in the backyard, that they can bring those hands-on materials with them. It's easier than bringing, the computers along or the smartboard along. So we always want to hold on to that paper piece for now, and not rely 100% on technology. If we would ever have a power outage, that would stop us completely from instructing, and we don't want to do that. So right now we're equally full.
Okay.
Any other feedback on the bid waiver? If not, we'll see this again at the end of the month and we'll see that process.
6, finance operations, 3, long-range facility study.
Okay, board members have updated or some feedback within my narrative on the research that was conducted since our last meeting. Looking to push forward this idea concept of a long-range audit of our facilities, and not in the first part of this would be to identify the vendor in which the district would recognize to complete the study. Okay, I think that's the first and the crucial part that would have to be looked at. I did include in your materials an excerpt of a facilities audit and knowing what to have. And the research that I studied, when you go into this, you want to be as encompassing as you can with your entire district, and because you're not typically doing this every year, every other year. You're looking at this, once every 10 years or so, and you want to be able to address that span efficiently during that time so that your data does not become old and outdated, and you can address all the potential areas within your district should it need maintenance, should it need improvements or replacements throughout that time frame. The information in which you have shows that potential RFP to go out for vendors to grasp what we're looking for. I guess we'll just continue with our feedback here if we're ready and willing to do that and see what comes forward through this process.
Go ahead and get the back and see what it's going to cost and look with it, what they all, how detailed they get it. They can break it down if we don't like certain things, just so we have an idea of what we're looking at.
In the RFP, I apologize for not having the page numbers on it. It would be the 1, 2 on the third page on the information to be submitted in the RFP. Number 1 and 2 in the middle of the page, that was added to this. That was not part of the one that was presented in October. Individual breakdown of costing to address each of the identified facilities assessment areas, and then it lists them. So each individual item would have a quote-unquote cost to address that area. And then number 2, total costing to address the facilities assessment areas encompassing as well. So if we figure, we see that, we really don't want to spend money on energy conservation. If that were the one that were to come up, we could exclude that from the process if it was appropriate. You can see exactly what we're getting into, and my guess is that the more you group together, the better price that you may receive. If you're doing singletons, it could potentially be more of an inflated work, because they are probably doing a lot of the same or similar work to complete the document at the end of the process.
Do we need 10 sealed copies of their request or their response?
Well, we're looking at our board members, myself, Mr. Storch, and so now we're at 7, 8, 9, and then 1 for filing with our central office, you know, as far as records, that's the thought process behind that, so that we can have.
I just see dollar signs and I see 10 copies or something.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, one copy, and when you go to the meeting, you pass it around to people at the meeting, and
Well,
doesn't make any difference to me.
Through the sealed bid process, when we open them up, being able to hand it out and here you go, I mean, that I think would work better. But yes, there's more incurred expense on their end, but they want our business. Hopefully we'll be able to meet the
I think this is
expectations.
something we want to spend more than 13 on it.
What's that? Sorry.
I think all of us would want to spend some time studying this.
One thing that I would recommend, if we do go forward with this, that I will send a copy of the RFP to Attorney Gill as well, just for him to give it a once-over before it goes out, posting with that. I guess I would like the board to formally approve this process at the end of the month, if ready. And at that time, when I bring forward the draft, I would recommend some dates to start this process that would be filled in, as far as when we would look to send the RFP out, when the sealed bids would be presented back to the district, you know, proposal bid opening, and then our assessment interviews and the selection process that we would utilize on our potential board process. That would be a change that you would see at the end of the month then. And if you want to revisit the potential vendors that are out there in our past board materials, I've listed all of the WASB recommendations or individuals that they support. That list of potential vendors would be contacted and made aware of the potential opportunity for them to engage in. And I know Dan has a source in his business ed world of posting RFPs out for all vendors to partake as well. So we'll get it out there for review.
This may be a stupid question, but would the option be available that we might actually use two vendors, like one vendor to do some of the jobs and one vendor to do the other? Would you agree to come together? Just a thought.
Potentially.
Is that a potential?
You know, when we receive all of our responses back, and if there are two vendors that we feel, hey, both of them have the skills, we want you, would you take facilities and you take the curricular components, whatever. I think we have the ability to dictate that if they're willing to take on the task, that
That's
we
what
are
I wanted to know.
putting that out there.
Thank you.
Yep.
You know, you're asking, but kind of vague, what you really want. Study will include infrastructure, safety, handicap, accessibility, energy, conservation, rural capacity,
Yep.
curricular enhancement, technology access. I mean, this is how, did you take this from somebody, or did you just?
This information is what I found through other RFPs that were out there. I think you want to be broad and let them fill in the blanks, knowing that.
What you're kind of doing is putting it out there, they're gonna put a price tag on everything, and then we can pick.
Yeah, and then we can, you know, within our,
We can pick what we want.
within our energy conversation, within our energy, can't even say the word.
Survey, yeah.
We can say, hey,
So that's basically what you're trying to do.
these are the specific areas within our conservation efforts of energy that we want you to look
We want
at.
a price on all of them, but we maybe want to pick one.
Right, exactly.
Because I was only looking for one.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's,
Not really good to do it all.
yeah, well, depending on the cost.
Yeah, I know, but I mean,
Right.
that's what I was kind of.
That's where the individual breakdown would say for each
That's
individual
why
one.
I asked if we could go with two companies.
Yeah.
We want to wait till the regular meeting and give them approval, or have them set up, get the RFP going?
Or you can write something up and then.
Yep, I can bring forward the potential draft with the date and time. I guess I would look to have this go out in, we're looking at November approval, mid-December, for the vendors to look at and process through.
Would you have this approved by Gil before us?
Yep, I'll send that out just for his once-over to make sure that our liabilities and whatnot are covered. I know within that document it does that the district reserves the right accept or reject any and all bids, waive any informalities received, or to accept any or all part of the bids considered advantageous to the Board of Education. That's kind of the coverall statement that gives the board their ability to dictate. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to ask Ms. Martin for that policy number on that CADR.
331.
333.1.
Thank you.
The fall technology purchase recommendations.
All right, I apologize. I've got a cold. I can't hear out of this year, so I can't hear you. Just speak louder. Last spring, we talked about the streamlining the process of technology down to 2 specific times during the year in which we would look to make purchases. I just want to start the conversation with that the purchases or the recommendations that are coming forward are part of our budget development for this year. This is not new budgeted monies outside of the existing 12-13 budget, the 13-14 budget. It is built from within. Tony and I have met as well as members of our technology team and our administrative team, and we'd just like to make the board aware of the following purchases. Note that the majority of them do fall below that $10,000 mark, in which there is a process to carry out the purchase of them. The first are printers in quantity of 6, and they would primarily be used in the high volume areas that are directly related to the computer labs, the specific printing that goes on within the different lab situations. That those computers they're heavy duty. They're made to be ran all day. Our current lab computers are age of 10 years going? 10 plus. Okay. They've served us well, and what we're experiencing now with the updates and increase within the program software which we are receiving and implementing, which is current, the printers aren't able to handle the software and the program updates, and it's creating havoc in being able to print efficiently as we should be.
Is that price each?
No, that's the total encompassing. The range, the anticipated range for the 6 printers is between $3,900 and $4,200. That was just preliminary.
Not each.
No, encompassing. Projectors replacement in the classroom, as up above here. Periodically, we need to replace. Those projectors are 7 years old, and they wear out. And as everything, we have to maintain that cycle of rotation for the projectors that are beginning to fail.
Same question there, about 500 pieces.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yep. That's all of the numbers reflect encompassing numbers. The batteries, what that entails, they're surge protectors within the Fremont IT closet. If there would be an electrical surge or power would go out, our servers, our infrastructure within would maintain the work within the system. These aren't just Duracell AA's we're looking at. They're very expensive, high-powered batteries that are intended for the systems to flawlessly continue if an electrical surge or power would go out. Recently, this fall, we had an electrical surge in Fremont. Some of you may be aware of that, and several of our surge protectors went out because of that, and they served their purpose. In that case, now the batteries will be able to pick up after that surge protector had been blown and continue with the upkeep of the system. The network OS refresh, network assessment. This is looking at our entire network to ensure that we are meeting the needs. If there's trouble or hotspots within our district that we need to be addressing, it gives Tony another set of eyes as well to see where we are at and meet our expectations within. This typically does not happen on an annual basis. It happens every few years. A few years back, and the board authorized with Technology Solutions at a time when we were talking about our SAN and different internal components that went down to assess. Similar in nature to that process again. iPad carts, 4 iPads, 2 carts, housed Weyauwega Fremont Elementary iPads. These are docking station carts which allow them to be recharged and get ready for access for the next day. iPads for special ed, 8 of them approximately. And some of our iPads within our district, they fail, they wear out. they get dropped, and not by design, but there is a need to make some additional purchases of iPads to sustain where we are within that. This next item, Tightrope, communicative software with video streaming for the middle school and high school. This is a new initiative that we would like to bring forward, which would entail an RFP process that would come forward for approval before going out. And many of you can probably relate to being in a doctor's office, or if you've been in a Fox Valley Tech uses a system. You walk in, you see a communicative board, and it's scrolling information, science classes in room 203, band concerts, and daily announcements. It's a universal communicative tool that Mr. Schrader and his office secretaries can use as a communicative device. If we had a Christmas concert, we could plug the Christmas concert in, and it could scroll during various times throughout the day on our televisions within the building. I know we have one in the high school, we have one down here in the middle school, I think two in the high school, okay, and then one in the middle school.
Are these the new TVs that are up there that aren't doing anything right now?
That's what we're coming for, right? Exactly. So that would be the networking software to allow this to happen. Okay. Phone service, phone system, 24 hours of phone service and maintenance is an annual process with which we go to maintain our IP phones VoIP system throughout the year. And then the last item is message discovery, email archive retention. We're obligated to maintain emails, and just on our end for up to, I believe it's 7 years, with accountability as far as open records and so on and so forth. And this process allows us to store our emails efficiently and safely accordingly. Tony, is there any finer points that you'd like to talk on to any of these, or?
Some of these are just annual costs, and some of this stuff is just, rotation of equipment replacement. Just more or less routine, part of our overall plan.
And if this, as we move through this process again, we bring something like this similar to the board in the month of March, I'm anticipating, in April, so that purchases can be made right around the end of the school year, and have this equipment available for Tony for implementation during the summer months as well. Typically in the spring, we talk about the Common School Library Fund, and we make a technology purchase to support our IMCs. You would see that in the spring as well as any other summer projects that would need potential support of the board for that.
What do we have now for the phone system?
What do we have?
24 hours. What do we have it now, or what do we?
Yeah, the phone service and maintenance is a support system. The phone, it has, it's a support. If something's not working as it should, it's a specialist that can come in and say, hey, this is wrong, this needs to be recalibrated within. It's support to maintain our.
We don't have that now.
I believe, do we have that right now, Tony? The 24 hours?
We've been paying as we go kind of thing, in the past.
This is yearly?
This is going to be an annual cost.
You need it?
Huh?
You really need it? How much do we spend? We spend $3,500?
Yeah. I would really like to have the expertise to just know about everything, and sometimes I just don't.
I worry a little about the column totals, $40,000 plus, and how the bidding process, with or without sealed bids, gets exercised.
Many of these vendors, will be from multiple vendors. It won't be one single vendor that addresses all of the purchases. To say that we would just go to one vendor and say, hey, hit submit and purchase them from all. No, we're obligated to secure the best pricing. So in our homework, we will investigate, if it's between 5 to 10,000 or 900 to 999, the three bid process accordingly, and even more than that, to ensure that we're getting the best bang for our buck and we're not spending money without doing our homework on that. And then the one that would qualify for RFP, well, we would establish the RFP and let the chips fall where they may with what they would come back with. But these are multiple vendors that are being looked at here.
When did we put the new phone? We spent a lot of money when we put the new phone system.
Oh, that was my predecessor.
3 years ago?
No, that was
Is it longer now?
that was when Dr. Harlan was here, one of his years.
That's a lot of money.
It was a couple $100,000.
It was a couple $100,000.
Right, right.
Are they still in business? Is this what you're gonna go through, or what?
Yeah, they're still in business, and Mike.
Is that what you're gonna work with?
Pretty much a lot of your hospitality, all your hotels and hospitals use Mitel and the other big product assistance.
Oh,
I guess I'm a little concerned about how many of these are wants and how many are needs. How many help students and how many help staff we want.
Didn't you say these were budgeted already?
There.
do we wanna help both students and staff?
You know, I think all of them can be justified, come back to both helping students, tremendously through our process, indirectly or directly.
You could replace this one doesn't work.
So you run dead?
Mine won't do.
Yeah, hers doesn't work. either.
But maybe I don't know how to put it.
Maybe not.
That's why
I'm gonna put an X somewhere in that word.
I'm sure there's a way I have to
Okay, next one.
Oh, you can replace one.
Oh, wait a minute, maybe it's not.
Okay.
C, health insurance participation outcome-based motives.
I wanted to follow up from discussion from our October committee meeting about the presentation that the representative from Interactive Health and AFG had brought forward about our district going to the concept of an outcome-based health insurance program. I gave you a lengthy narrative to kind of start the thought process as to what we could potentially move toward. When you notice my final sentence in there, I encourage your creative thinking as well to address this topic. Most recently at our annual meeting, at a certain point, we were talking about annual surpluses and what that was and why do we have it and how can we use it and what can we do to reinvest. And specifically, we talked about the insurance surplus and how that has supported our insurance fund balance to ensure the integrity of the process as we move forward. This goes kind of hand in hand with the idea of promoting an outcome-based health insurance program. If we move in that direction, I think the district is now positioned with 7 years of positive results to expand on a potential outcome-based plan or motive. And in looking at the potential surpluses that have been generated, and if we are to continue further with similar, same results, something that we could implement to further promote health and wellness within our staff, which ultimately drives down our total cost of our plan annually. The better shape we're in, the lower our premiums are, and our annual renewals go lower, and lower. And insurance companies and our third-party vendors that bid for our business see that. So hypothetically speaking, I'm looking at an idea that would need board recommendation to support how we could go forward with this. First would be recognizing the outcome-based program, and what that would mean is that all of our members that are in our plan would be recommended to participate in our biometrics testing. Many, we had just a few people that didn't participate this last year, so we're already there with the participation of our biometrics testing, and each individual received, you flip to the second page, a sample sheet of a goal and their health profile of what they should be working at to achieve healthy wellness within. Now, the health score and goal is based on the different items, high blood pressure, cholesterol, glucose, triglycerides, and tobacco use. For most people, okay, not all, but for most people, those items are factors in which we have the ability to change or address. Some people don't. I understand that. But for the majority of the people, if you have high blood pressure, you can make lifestyle changes to address that. Triglycerides, glucose, those are all items. So that's the mindset of what this goal sheet is. It's not something that's unattainable that people can't address on an annual basis. It's very much reachable. In this example that you see on John's sample, you can see that his scores range from anywhere from a -5, underneath systolic blood pressure, to glucose of 32. And this apparently, John's sample is a tobacco user, and he has a score of 40. So his total score is 57. All right. If you read the captions next to each It gives you an explanation as to what the individual should be striving to do and where they are at and how that affects their individual health profile. The squared or rectangle box down at the bottom gives the goal recommendation that is feasible and reasonable for John Sample to reach 1 year out. Okay, in this case, his goal would be to lower his score by 34 points by the next time he has their annual evaluation. Okay, if you flip it to the back.
That's only possible if he stops tobacco.
Yeah, there you go. That's one healthy
Looking at the numbers, it's the only possibility.
He's going to save a lot of money, you know.
It's the only way you can do it.
Right.
It's the only way you can reach it.
On the back, it talks about the different components of what makes up the personal health score. The rhyme and reason, you know, this was designed by physicians and other healthcare professionals and targeted based on national medical guidelines. So IHS, our third-party vendor that administers this, follows those recommendations, would have been forward for consideration. It clearly explains how the personal score is calculated with the different at-risk variables and how that plays into it. It gives out, you know, the personal health goal, how it is set. The perfect score would be one of -20, okay, and noting the ranges accordingly depending on the current health condition of an individual. The last one that I just wanted to point out is the last paragraph. What if a medical condition might prevent me from achieving my goal? And there are probably people within our plan that this would apply to, and that doesn't instantly exclude them from the prevention or the potential opportunity to receive a motive to be part of this. They just simply have to have physician recommendation and authorization that where they are at, okay, is where they're at. And by training or making lifestyle choices is not going to change their outcome. But those individuals will be actively engaged in different goals and activities to ensure that they are moving or trying to maintain as healthy a lifestyle as possible. So this is something that can feasibly apply to everyone on our plan. So now taking this concept of having individuals in our plan work towards that health goal on an annual basis, one of the ideas to address that surplus is to look at what is potentially generated on an annual basis. I'll just use a couple numbers from this year and last year as examples. Just to start out, the district contributes 86% of premiums towards our health care costs. We're very much appreciative of that, and our members would be as well. It's a nice benefit that supports many of our employees. Because we are partially self-funded, and our experience dictates how much we pay into it at the end of the year, we often show a surplus. This past year, as a district, we banked roughly $330,000 that would have gone to the insurance companies had we not been self-funded. So out of that $330,000, one may think that the district represents 86% of that, and our stakeholders or members which pay into it represent 14%. So I would be, hypothesizing around the idea of taking a percentage of that surplus and putting it back as an incentive for our members if they reach their outcome-based goals. All right, noting that it's not a guarantee that we're going to receive positive results or surplus on an annual basis, okay? I think we need to guard ourselves within that, and that's open for discussion when we start chatting about this. Currently, members contribute at 14%. I would recommend that we would look at a configuration where 14% potentially would go back to our members, noting that there is also always that risk of a negative year. I would put out for consideration of something of the nature of 10% of what that would mean. So in this year, specifically, a 10% surplus of our identified fund this year would be approximately $32,000. All right, and we have 103 members that are currently on our plans, whether it be single or family. Okay, so taking that 32,000, dividing it out by 103, collectively comes up with a number of approximately $313. So that potentially, or a savings of $26.14 per month. So that's what our members, if they would meet their outcome motives within their health goals, could potentially receive after the district sets its annual insurance rates. Okay? And this would take place as of a July 1st renewal date. So we would have documentation if our individuals met the goal. If the members didn't meet the goal, they would become eligible for the 10% surplus savings that had been generated, and then their insurance premiums would be adjusted accordingly for that calendar year. Now note that if the district has $100,000 surplus, okay, now we're not looking at $32,000, we're looking at $10,000. So that number fluctuates from year to year. It's not always going to be the same amount. It's based on the true numbers of what program turns out June 30th at the end of our insurance fiscal year. Members from our community was, what are we doing with this? How can we put this back to work? This is an idea, consideration. I think it ties nicely with our outcomes-based motive. It encourages healthy wellness and lifestyles that are sound for our members, ultimately driving down renewal rate costs district-wide.
Scott, members, when you define members, are you talking employees or employees and spouses?
Employees, well, that needs to be determined. That needs to be determined as to how we would include employees and spouse, because currently this year we had employees and spouse recommended to take the biometric testing. I would say if we're going in all in, that it would be employee and spouse. If we're really going to look at the spouse may incur just as many medical bills as an employee, as part of our plan as the actual policy holder.
And children to 26.
Oh, that I.
Do you have any statistics on youth? You might do well on your testing, but then if you, I'm not picking on anybody.
Sure, that's fine. Use me as an example.
If you have children or something like that, your cost, you might hit this, but then your cost, do you have any, actual cost?
The number of individuals that exceeded their...
Yeah. I suppose they don't have that.
Or is the question this?
No, but I mean...
Yeah, we have the number of people that have met that threshold, the reinsured number. That's what we're looking at there. I think that's what the answer.
You might do good on your testing, but then all of a sudden, let's say you have a kid breaks something or has something wrong.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, so to me, there's too many what ifs.
And I think these are lifestyle choices. I think you're always going to have the broken legs or the broken arms or that type of thing. These are like what I would call the long-term factors that dictate, later in life. Typically, I have diabetes or I have different ailments that are going to continually draw on our plan at a higher rate. I have an organ transplant or something of that nature, which could decimate a plan if one would have that. But this promotes that long-term health within the plan.
I probably could talk as long as you did promoting it against it.
Okay. I'm not totally against it, but there's too many what ifs in there. You base this on one thing, but there's a whole bunch of others out there too that contribute to your extra cost.
I guess we're still looking at whatever that surplus is, though.
But I've had a problem with surplus everything since we started, and you know that.
Yep, right.
And I mean, if we would have went with AFG's recommendation, we probably would have had $600,000. So I mean, why don't we keep? It was always bugged me why we charge so much for premium. We save so much for premium. Why don't we knock the premium down? If you knock the premium down $200 per person, that would be a lot more than $313.
So in other words, you want to reward everybody no matter what else.
Well,
I think one of the beauties of the formula that Scott went through is that you're promoting a healthy lifestyle for employees so that the experience that they have typically in the bar and broken legs would be less. So then you're again saving money and you're saving money for the employees. So it's kind of a win-win.
yeah, but I'm looking at both sides. Taxpayers and employees. Tax, you're only going to get, and it's going to go up and down. I'd rather have it lower than, we dropped it actually 6% last year. And we still have $300,000.
Correct.
So why don't we just, we're not in the money-making business here. Really.
I would agree.
So I would rather, and there's a lot of what ifs out there with this healthcare thing. We're going to looking at adding, what, potentially $400,000 more? You know,
If we bring on other new members and whatnot.
you know, if you bring in new people, I mean, I'm always looking ahead.
Yeah, well, I think I am as well, you know, with this and what can come from sustaining the experience that we currently do have.
You know, I think you are looking ahead then, and you're trying to, you know, if our staff stays with us long term, we're promoting them long-term healthy lifestyles. So then over the course of their employment in the district, their health costs would typically be less than. So
Yeah, but I mean, as you get older.
it's not a money-making thing. It's a health. It's a
Yeah,
health
I mean,
investment. And you know, at that point when we go to renewals, you know, maybe our costs are lesser, and you know, and we can maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, every time they want to renew, they've always told us we're supposed to go higher. So how can we trust what they?
You know, and I think that's another topic for conversation. You know, if the consultant, you know, that works for us.
Yeah, I mean,
But this is not unusual. I mean, even in my Medicare now, we're supposed to take certain tests in order to get something out of that. So,
I'd rather
and
see-
I know a lot of my parents that daycare do it because I know they say, no, I gotta go in and get
Yeah,
my
everybody.
blood tested. So I mean,
I guess this thought would reward the individuals that are actively working to meet their health goals, and if individuals choose not to, then they're potentially, that's another conversation. If you don't meet your health goal, is there, I won't use the word penalty, but is there a clause that says you're paying at a higher rate? You know, to have that services, potentially you are costing us more by being unhealthy or presenting more of a risk. I know many businesses implement that methodology as well into their plan.
I believe the state of Wisconsin charges more now if you're a smoker, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Any state employee.
I don't know for certain, but I've heard that, right?
Well, that's part of Obamacare. Smokers are charged more across the board, so it's not just state of Wisconsin.
No, but I think Wisconsin started that a year ago.
You know, one thing that I'm thinking about here is that I'm always for rewarding good behavior and all that. And this is not going to be very liked. Searching for words here, but you know, a 14%, an employee paying 14% of the premium is already a hell of a good deal, and especially in light of what premiums are, what's happening to premiums right now. I mean, I just had a health insurance meeting at work today, and for a family policy, our premiums, which are 25%, is $501.14 a month, and it's for a good plan, but I mean, that's a lot of money. So to me, paying 14% is already a good deal, and to give the incentive back, just cash, just feels like you're already getting a heck of a good deal. I have an idea. What if instead of just giving cash money back, what if you give the teachers that same amount of money, a stipend, to be able to use however they want in their classroom? Maybe there's some things that they want to purchase. Maybe in the past they purchased it out of their own money, out of their own pocketbook. You know what I'm saying? Because that way, now when people are questioning what's happening with all this surplus, well, we're giving it back to the teachers to use in their classroom. To me, that just...
Sure.
And I mean, I'm coming from...
If you're a student with a healthy teacher, you'll get more than a student with an unhealthy teacher.
Well, you know, I mean, but you're still going to give, you know, incentives for good behavior. So, you want money in your classroom? Make healthy choices. I don't know.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I'm not recommending that it changes the contribution rate to 14%. They would still contribute at 14%
Well, yeah.
initially,
Yeah.
or whatever the board was.
If they met their goals, the money was not like you're checking
No.
in a year, it can apply to their premium.
The premiums would be adjusted accordingly.
Yeah. So, what does that do to premiums then? Take them down to 10%, or you know, I mean, just as a taxpayer who's paying a lot of money for my health insurance, and then I look at what people are charged on these exchanges, I mean, you know, and
Sure. Do I get a turn? Who's on the committee? I should get as much as the pro side. Who's the committee? Committee members, please.
Of what?
Insurance committee members.
We have a self-insurance committee.
I'd like the names, please.
Myself, Debbie, Sandy, Julie Hendricks. Help me out with that.
John Lawman, Janet Meyer,
Sean,
Cindy Giselle,
Charlotte Kinsey, and
Okay.
Sean. That's my information.
Okay. The majority of them will receive this benefit if it improves, correct?
Some would,
Okay.
some would not.
So I think that's a rather rigged committee
Oh, wait.
to make this recommendation. I have the floor.
Okay, when you're done, I will.
You have the floor then.
I'll wait.
In the third paragraph, where the district experienced a negative year, do the members pay more then? In other words, I think the district is taking the risk, but if there's a benefit, we pass it out. I think when you're self-insured, there's a reason to have surplus, because it's likely we're going to, through ACA, likely to have to insure more of our staff. So to have a committee say, let's give this back to the staff, which the majority of the committee is that, I think is a little one-sided. The 14% premium, 86% premium split has not been historically true. That's only recently.
Correct.
So some of that surplus has been a much bigger percentage of district paid taxpayers
I
and
agree.
staff paid.
I agree.
So by using current numbers, doesn't really reflect on the full value of our surplus, because most of that surplus in the past was put there by the district, not by the state.
95%.
Yes, so it was a 95-5 split in the past. So some of that surplus is nowhere near this 86-14 split. I could go on and on, but long and short of it is, I think we should keep surplus for the self-insured risk that we're taking, and not be a one-sided, return premiums to one side of the payer side of this, and you take all the risk on the other side. So the district takes the risk of it if we have a bad year. I think we know fully well that we're on borrowed time. 1 out of 5 years is generally not so good. We're probably at 7 now. Part of it's because we're paying additional premiums that I think that we need to. But to assume that we're not going to have a bad year and start dishing out the 10% now, when it's likely we're going to have to pay for more staff members to be insured, just doesn't seem like good business practice.
my one question regarding that is, when you talked about that $330,000 surplus, you're talking about this one last year.
Correct.
So you're not talking about taking 10% of the balance.
I agree.
You're talking about taking 10% of this one
This
last
annual
year.
year. Correct.
So, using that, then, it doesn't matter how much the school put in the past, but how much the district put in the past. You're talking about basing it off of this one last year.
The risk is you have a good year, made 300, or got to have 300. Give some premium reduction. Then you have the bad year, but you can't recover it. That's a one-way street.
How much is that balance now?
900 some?
They share the win, but they don't share the loss. That's not the way to run a business.
Well, I respect
You
your
got a
opinion.
lot of money in that.
One way, another way that I didn't share in here, and this is, I appreciate the conversation because we're doing this bottom thing, we're creatively thinking, all right? And that's what this needs to go through. Another way to, now, our reserve that we've built up, okay? The intention of that reserve is to address a negative year, and if for some reason we choose to go away from being self-funded and play out our claims through this month of July and August, the runout that we would need to do. We have the funds established to do that right now. Another conceptual idea that the board consider if you want to give back to the taxpayers is looking at our surplus and the cost of the plan. So when we receive our annual renewal, if we had $330,000 in surplus, the the district's taking $330,000 of that cost before we calculate annual premiums for our members. So we just lowered that total cost by $300,000. You've used that surplus to address the total cost. You invested it into the cost of the plan. End result is our members would have probably better rates because you're picking up whatever surplus cost to support that. The part that potentially could be frustrating as far as equal use on the outcomes motive part, you're encouraging that individual to be healthy within that. In what I just shared, it's just going to happen if that was something that happened. Well, that's another way to put it back.
I would like to point out, I think the implication was that the insurance committee voted on this, and I don't believe.
No, this.
Yeah, I mean, when he was saying, well, the people, I mean, I meant to do that. I mean, there was the person came in about it,
Right.
but I don't want you to think that the teachers sitting on it, that Deb and I voted.
No, as a
that
matter
we
of
have-
fact, Mr.
that
Scott
we
did
were
ask me
promoting
after.
this.
Scott had talked to me after trying to come up with a creative way to do something. Him and I bounced this off of him to have him bring this forward to the board. So it wasn't all the subcommittee or whatever else. It was myself and Scott talking, and I gave him direction to say, try to come up with something, let's see what happens, and then we'll move on.
The only thing the
Hence
committee
the
talked
discussion.
about was listening to the representative come, just like that
Right.
same
Talk
person
about
came that night,
outcomes-based.
right?
Yeah.
But
Moving towards that.
I don't want it to seem like the committee sat there and said, we're gonna benefit.
Well, let's give it back to ourselves, because that was never,
No.
So actually, there's $1 million to $450,000 of that is set in case we have to quit.
That's the run out.
So actually you have 6 something, 650.
Right.
So I would, lower the premium, that way everybody would.
And I guess are we, if we're to take that approach, are we comfortable with just lowering the premiums and not asking people to do more to
I
ensure
mean,
that?
if you know your test scores is bad, even if for $300 or $200 or $100 is going to change, you're going to change it on your own.
I think
Because they're either going to change it on their own, and the people that aren't going to, they're just not going. You're not going to go up to $100 or $50 whatever. You know that. That's human nature. I've lived with this, and I'll live another 20 years with this. So, that's, to say this is an incentive, it is, but it really, some people it is. Some people it's an incentive just to look at it and say, hey, I got a problem. And some people, if you put money in front of them, maybe. And some of them will say, no.
Can we offer the participation outcome base without an incentive? I mean, then nobody's gonna do it, period.
If it's outcome based, I think there needs to be a motive at the end. What does it mean?
Yeah, but right now, if you don't take the test, you pay
20%.
So that's a more of a,
Yep.
find a way to do it.
And that seems to be effective, right? The
Plus,
demos.
we stuck a lot of money into the fitness rooms for the staff. I mean, you gotta add that on there too. That's a nice room.
That's an integral part of.
But I mean,
how
we've
we-
never complained about, you're taking money out of that fund, and you have little incentives for it now. I mean, I see it,
Yep. Right.
for $100 or
Yep.
whatever, and
Right.
there's, subway cars.
Yep.
So you're doing it that way. Plus, like Debbie said, 14%, only paying 14%.
I think the incentive discussion can be the carrot and stick incentive. At 14%, there's probably already enough carrots out there that you could probably go the stick side of it and say, hey, we really need to have you do things here, or you pay the 20% by not playing with.
Another way to look
There's a carrot and stick discussion in here.
If you don't meet your outcomes-based goal, you're at 20.
That's another way of looking at it.
Yeah,
Rather than
it is.
using this carrot, you can also use the stick if there's enough already in the 14% of the carrot.
Yeah.
Just a discussion.
Very much so. I guess how aggressive we want to move through with that, but that's definitely an approach that a lot of employees use.
Is there any, to Debbie's point, great point as far as being possibly be able to utilize some of that money savings to put it back into the classroom versus.
Yeah, but not all the teachers.
That's true.
So,
I do those.
well, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe, you take that, you look at what needs the school has and you
I think if it's in the big picture here, if we do, and I mentioned this in the narrative here, if we are outcome-based, we need to start communicating with our members so that they're aware of what the expectations are in February when we offer our biometrics testing. So whether it's you meet your goal or you're at 20%, or there's potential incentive stipend that can go back into your classroom, we need to communicate that out efficiently so people can prepare so that they're ready to be knowledgeable what the expectations are. In AFG and IHS, I apologize for the acronyms, but they would be an integral part of communicating that message and expectations out to our staff so they're right. Because this can't be something that needs to be, and our employees need to be comfortable and confident of what they're getting into, knowing that it's a third party that's administering this process and monitoring the expectations and results. And we're not responsible for that.
I don't want to remember, but I guess I just would put this off a year or two and see how this whole thing plays out. What the whole insurance change that's happening. That's just my thought. Just my thought.
We don't
because
know.
Nobody seems
You don't know.
We haven't heard, I think, Debbie.
maybe you know
have
more
you heard
about it than
anything
I
about
do,
it?
but.
Well, the one thing that I will say, like at my, my employer, our insurance is not changing this year. Essentially it's the exact same insurance. I think school districts is also, right? I mean, you don't have any structural changes to your
We'll annually revisit it.
Well, yeah,
Only
of
who we
course,
might have
but-
to insure.
Huh?
Only who we
Do
might
you need
have.
our time, there's time criteria you have to meet, or we need all that?
You have to. I mean, they have to.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Any insurance plan, any
I don't
insurer
know,
has
but
to
I-
provide insurance that meets qualifications.
Right.
So
The only thing is we don't know if we have to insure
Yeah.
at this time, am I right? I'm a lawyer.
Sure. I guess I would keep, maybe it comes up in further discussion around our renewal. When we look at what our identified insurance fund balance is, and if the board is comfortable then offsetting some of the renewal rates with what our surplus has been generated, at that time. If we're not comfortable moving forward with the outcomes-based motive, as a district, we're going to continue to promote the biometric testing and the healthy lifestyle choices within the 14 and 20% based on your participation. Just going on the feedback that was generated from within, and I know at our sub-insurance committee level, we have from abroad talked about some items that potentially we didn't zero in on like way to get the wheels rolling here on this topic.
And because it's a committee, and I should be able to say what I feel, I think those that benefit from this should probably not take such a strong stand on promoting.
What's our consensus here?
Right?
What is it?
They're going to
Wait,
put it to the wayside or not.
when do we renew?
During that February, March, April timeframe is when we send out the renewal. We like to time it up as close as we can to the June because our experience ratings, the more experience we have, the better results.
Do you have any statistics on anything, how the members, where they go, place?
We have, I don't know, Dan, you're into the individual. I mean, I don't know if we want to report on.
Group and-
Yeah, we can probably talk to
Yeah.
AFG and see what they.
I mean, how did we test out? How are we? I mean, what I mean, they can give us data, 20% were here, 30% were here.
As far as at
They must
that
have
stop
that.
loss
Yeah.
mark, what percent were
Not
at the
at
stop
that,
loss?
but I mean on the testing. How many tested good, how many tested?
Oh,
Those that were
we have that data, yes, from IHS. We receive that annually.
Those that you recommend to improve, how many improve?
Yeah.
I think that's
I
good.
mean, how many?
What are our risk factors?
How many are high risk?
Yes, I think we have that on that one report from IHS. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, you don't have to name it, just.
Right, yeah. What they do is they categorize the risk factors and the percentage of our employees that
I
fall
would
into
like
it.
to see how many would qualify for,
Yeah.
did these things.
I know the gal that was here from IHS, approximately 80% on a national average, meet their goals.
See, they came, I wasn't too impressed with that, because they came, they didn't give our statistics, they gave it to everybody they worked with. I mean, they were selling the product, but they're not gonna be negative. I wish that they would've came and said, this is what you're doing, this is how you score, but they didn't do that.
And some of our employees are doing some things that are causing certain amount of danger.
We're young, we're what,
Drugs
44 years
alcohol.
old, 44 years old.
Yeah. There's a lot of people at 70 that are better health than some of you that are 50.
Well, I'm just saying.
Just want to point that out.
That's how you know.
Or just by age.
Okay.
So are we sitting on it then, or are we moving forward with something? I guess, is there any other areas that you'd like to bring forward or not?
I'd like to see what premium reduction.
See, go towards that, the surplus, potential surplus? Okay.
But I do like the testing.
Yeah, I like the
that.
testing, and I would keep the testing, and if you don't
Where's
take
that?
the testing, keep 20%.
Okay.
And I like the little things they're doing.
What happens if you test someplace else and then no, you do that?
I believe you need to have
What is
the draws done with their system to have the results.
So what if I go someplace and I come here and they don't match up?
No,
You can't do
you
that?
can't do that.
Which is very
No, we've
control.
had some people actually who've had a full, test done,
Profile.
bunch of full, done, but they don't
Accept them.
accept them because they don't know what that panel of tests are. IHS has their own panel that they draw. Right now they don't do it. They won't accept anyone else's. Mm-mm.
And staff spouses are voluntary or required?
Required.
I guess as we get closer to the renewal time, if there is an intention or direction you'd like to go, we can communicate that amongst the board, and then with our stakeholders, so everybody's knowledgeable of what you would like to do with that. When we get into those renewal discussions, if whatever that direction is, we just need to actively be communicating it out. Okay?
Steve, Mr. Fitness Equipment. Talk to Ben about getting something, formal letter. You said you're meeting on Wednesday to discuss it. We'll have it for the regular meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah, our monthly meeting is Wednesday.
Does that work?
Yep.
So that could be an action item.
You're donating it to the district.
Is there any feedback from the board? I know last time Neil said the value of the equipment was inflated by the Booster Club. What is the feel of the other board members?
How many appraisals were there on that? 2? Wasn't there an initial one and then got done again by another?
And, the initial one, I think we submitted it at around $59,000, and then the second one come back higher.
And you wanted to donate it at the $59,000. Prior 76, I think it was like 76,000.
Right. 59. That's what our initial one was. Then,
Where's the precedent for that? When this baseball lights got put up, did the district have to match it? Did anything the Booster Club ever donate to the school system ever have to be matched? Where's the precedent for this?
I believe the press box facility, the actual vertical structure was matched. I think that's the only one that happened. I'm not sure if the lights were matched, but I believe the press box
So,
structure was.
give me the story of the press box. The Booster Club donated a press box?
Well, during that time frame is when that matching fund policy was established to help support construction, I believe, of that. And the Booster Club brought forward, I don't know the dollar amount at that time, but the district matched whatever their contribution was to construct that structure.
Okay, so the district needed a press box, the Booster Club gave some, and the district gave some to get it done.
Correct.
Okay.
Plus, I think the people worked on it, it wasn't built by a contractor.
There's a lot of volunteers.
It was volunteers, and I think the kids in Tech Ed, did they do quite a bit of it?
I don't think the Tech Ed did, that was a different project. Tech Ed did.
They built the red shed.
They built the red shed, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
The Tech Ed kids, they built that red shed, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
No, the one.
They did. Dave Binger and his crew. Yeah.
But I don't think that, well,
I don't
when
know.
I was involved in the press box, there
Yeah.
wasn't any student class structure.
Kids came and helped. That's what
Yeah, kids were there, but not like a technical.
I think I've been very clear that the donator has a vested interest to have it high. The Booster Club has a vested interest to have it high. I don't think there's very much precedent that we should take those numbers and or match it.
We're not
We're not
matching it.
I have
Then why does it need a value?
Well,
My suggestion would be that it's donated unconditionally without a dollar value.
we, at our church, the guy donated acreage for the cemetery, right? We put $1 million on it.
Because they needed it for IRS reasons?
Yeah.
Wait, we don't need to do that here.
Wow.
The Booster Club can
What's
do
the
it for
difference?
IRS
It's not-
reasons.
It's not hurting anybody.
I don't understand why this is so suspicious.
I'd
yeah,
like- can I say
I have a
something?
question. What is the vested interest of the Booster Club? These people are raising money to donate this money. Why would we want to inflate the price of this equipment way up?
If it has matching funds, that's why.
These people have donated hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 2 years. We persecute them for doing a good job for the community and for the kids. You especially, Mr. Lewis, you do that. Why? I'm wondering why. What is this?
How much was donated for the track?
What's the real angle for you?
I don't believe that a fitness center for our district is a priority.
I first question the legality of this posting because as from the public, I have no idea that that you're talking about accepting a donation.
This is just, Neil asked for this to be put on the agenda last meeting.
But now you're telling us that you're gonna act at the
We're not acting
November
on
meeting.
We're not acting on anything.
I'm not finished. You just said that at the November meeting, they're gonna donate the fitness.
We're gonna receive a letter, we're gonna expect to see a letter with our board materials prior to that meeting, and then whether we act on it or not, I don't know.
Okay, and then I would like to comment on the value of the equipment. I took all the model numbers of that used equipment, and I received information that it's a fraction of the cost of that appraisal. So to say that Neil's persecuting the Booster Club, we get lots of phone calls from the community. They only talk to him because everybody else, it doesn't matter who's calling me. Taxpayers are
You guys
calling.
always say lots of people. But
And you say lots of people support it.
Okay, Rachel.
I didn't say that.
Kirk,
Yes, you did.
I didn't say that.
So the value of that equipment, yes, it is in question.
This is a vendetta that's gone on long enough. Either we decide to do this project or not. Right now, you guys are looking the Booster Club in the eye and saying, no, thank you. Your hard work is not wanted. That is a terrible message to send not only to the public, but to our students.
And do we
I
have the
hope you think
need
about
and
that.
space for
Okay,
this, or will we see 2 months from now that we need to build a fitness center because we have no room for the used
Let me
equipment?
take the floor for a few minutes and just count it down. Mr. Delich,
I'm completely fine.
I've got an $80,000 Lake Michigan boat. It's a fishing boat. It's good for taking kids on fishing trips, so it's for the children. I'm going to let you have it if you give me $40,000. But you're going to be required to run it for the rest of your life. And remember, you can put any price you want on it because it's for the children. Add a zero to it, you've got the fitness center. Will you take the boat?
What is the history of this group in doing those things? They've always been true to their word.
My point is, would you take the boat? I don't think the district should take the fitness center because I don't think it's a priority with its ongoing costs.
You just said it. You don't think.
That's right.
You.
And I'm speaking for a lot of people.
Who?
The community.
all right.
We all
Tim,
have a lot of people that
okay.
don't hear names.
Okay, Tim, you can give us your letter for donation, or whatever the Booster Club wants to do. We'll get a little information and we'll either act on it or be informational and the end of the month.
like I said, we had appraisal, you know, I've heard there's other ones, but there hasn't been any documentation. So that, I asked her that after the last meeting, but, you know, if there is a different value that I'm seeing other than what we have.
Would the board like me to get a written value on it?
It doesn't matter.
Then we should have no value on it.
That's up to the guy that donated it, and it's up. When we do it, doesn't matter, because if he overrates it, the IRS is gonna come after it. So it has nothing to do with it. If they wanna donate it, they can donate.
So it'll be donated without a dollar value? Between the booster club and the donator
They're the ones.
is the IRS
Okay.
issue. And to the school district, we don't have to be involved.
You're getting way off here. The guy donated it to the booster club. So they're responsible.
Okay.
They're donating it to the school district. So they set the price. We're not setting the price.
That's my question.
We're
Are
not-
we
we're
setting the
not-
price?
We are not setting the price. They're setting the price.
Right.
So we have nothing to do with it. So if the IRS or any tax obligations, it's on the booster club. But they're giving it to us for nothing. They received it. We didn't receive it from the person. The booster club received it. So I mean, we really have nothing.
At the last meeting, I had 3 items that I wanted to discuss, and the donation thing came up, so I didn't discuss it. But my 3 thoughts on it is either, I think the booster club can donate to the district if they like. I think it should be unconditionally and without a set dollar value between the booster club and the district.
There is no set price between the booster club.
I think they should, as a minimum, fill out the form if it's going to be continually stored there with their ownership, with an ending date. Or move. Those are the 3 choices that I wanted to discuss last meeting, but it was brought up that it was likely to be donated, and I didn't discuss it. So if it's continually stored, the donated one, then I think the donated one needs to come to the district without a dollar figure.
It's
Have I
coming,
missed
it's
something?
coming to the district without a dollar figure.
Have I
They
missed
just
something?
have
Aren't we
their
just,
$20
excuse me, I'm
in
talking now. Have I missed something? Aren't they just donating equipment, period? Or is there some hidden motive here I don't know about? Aren't you just donating that equipment to us?
Yeah.
I mean, depending what you're
Well-
needing, so what?
I think the issue and the reason this all came up is because Neil hasn't, I don't know, he brought this up about the equipment being stored at the school facility. And so that was where this whole donation, obviously we want to donate the equipment and money to build the fitness center. And, you know, at first we went through the process of there was no matching funds, the school had a matching funds policy, so, yeah, we want to donate the equipment and money to the school for a fitness center, correct? I don't think there's a.
And do you anticipate the donated equipment is going to be in lieu of cash per policy 665? Or is it donated with no dollar value and not going to be part of 665?
I think the equipment will be donated, and pending on the, I don't know, I can't answer that personally.
Okay.
I think that'll come out at the.
That's the
maybe
question.
That's what I'll bring back to the booster club.
That's the question. Because Dan believes it's coming at $0 value to us, donated, free, no conditions. I also would agree with that. But if it comes with a dollar value that anticipates 665 matching funds, then I don't think the board should accept your numbers. It's that clear.
Wait to see the donation letter. 6B, Pledge of Allegiance.
I was just curious, I did a presentation at a school, Epton West High School, and I was there for the first period, and there were out of, let's say 33 students, easily a third of them did not stand for the pledge, and I asked the teacher afterwards what the deal was, why they didn't stand, and she said that in the Epton School District, they're not allowed to force kids to, or require kids to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and she couldn't like it, but she can't do anything about it. So I was just wondering, you know, is that like a statewide thing? Is that just for that school district? What goes on here? I was just really disappointed to see kids not standing.
I guess as far as.
Everyone wants to be a socialist.
But you know what? This is United States of America. Last time I looked,
And
and
it
we
was
do have a
written by
pledge.
socialists.
And if you don't like living here, I would say go somewhere else. You know,
Maybe to address your question as to what goes on in our district, the pledge is stated each morning at the beginning of the day in the various buildings. The students are encouraged to participate within that. My walkthrough is the vast majority, and Doug and Jeremy and Candy can contribute to this if it's not accurate. The majority of the students stand. The one classroom that I checked in on the other day, there was one student that did not. There has been some information that's come forward for whether it be religious beliefs or whatnot, whether or not they choose to participate. As far as us mandating that they do participate, we do not have that authority. We can encourage the patriotism and today's Veterans Day of all days, absolutely. And encourage that. We've got great programs throughout our district. But is it mandatory? No. Is it encouraged? Yes.
and generally you said kids who stand.
The majority of the students.
And she said, and the thing that was the most discouraging to me is she said that there were some students that, had the religious or cultural differences and so that, made sense. But she said, I think most of them are just too lazy to stand. And that, and that's what's just disappointing to hear.
Sure. And I guess to address that, if that's the case, we need to be working hard in our civics and our social studies curriculum to really educate and reinforce, what our country has done to put us in the position to have a pledge and what it stands for from a nation, with that.
Is an opinion of founding fathers available on the issue?
Okay.
Would the opinion of Thomas Jefferson on value on the issue?
I guess I don't know that answer.
Well, he was one of the original presidents, founding fathers, and he was quoted as saying, "I pledge undying hostility to any government restriction on free minds of people." It seems to me as though that's in contradiction of Pledge of Allegiance that's only been around for 100 or so years.
I don't believe we make the children say that thing.
No, we do not. It's not a
We
mandate.
did when I taught it.
There, I have places in Supreme Court cases that have made their way to the Supreme Court on this.
But from what I've seen, even when they sing, what they sing at the beginning of the sporting events, most of our kids are pretty good. I mean, even the little ones that are playing around, I've noticed. Sorry, I go to Manawal one right now, but I notice they stop and take off their. I think that's all.
Yeah, it was more just a question.
Sure, that's fine. I appreciate the feedback.
7, personal negotiations, 7A, resignations.
An upcoming resignation of a JV baseball coach will be on the agenda at the end of the month. We will look to fill that position accordingly for the start of the season.
School board salaries, discussion from the annual meeting.
I had chatted with Mr. Ehrenberg on this topic to see if it would be appropriate, just not that the board would take any action, because the board is not obligated or has the ability to address this topic in this forum, but just to have a short discussion from the annual meeting, just to refresh. During the annual meeting, during the resolution which addressed board salaries, there was discussion from the community about adjusting board members' salaries based on participation at our monthly meeting, not the committee meetings, but at the monthly meeting. I included again for review on the back the resolution and the salaries in which members are paid accordingly. If there is direction to adjust, change, modify going forward, it could not happen until the 2014 annual meeting, and it would need to come from the community as well. But if the board wanted to dialogue on this, put it on the committee agenda or something later in the year, their discretion. But
What was the big deal?
There was discussion of if board members miss the monthly meeting, should they be compensated for that meeting? That's what was brought up.
In my opinion, it's not so much for Scott to state, it's not for us to decide.
No, it's not.
If they wanted to change it, they should have changed it.
It was asked that the board at least be made aware of it and collectively.
And that's why we put it on the agenda for now,
Exactly.
first meeting.
I mean, we haven't had a raise in 10 years. If they want to cut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi.
Well, I think it was made pretty clear that we should discuss it at some point. I don't think we need to discuss it right now.
No.
But I think that before next year, we should discuss it.
Well, I put it on for this one, just to throw it out there, everybody. Look at a light, look at a light.
I thought you said we were gonna be
We were asked to
I don't know.
talk. Okay. We'll look at it in the spring at some point, probably.
I feel it's a conflict of interest.
I agree. We were at, when you were there, we were asked to talk about it, correct?
At the annual meeting,
We were asked to discuss it at a committee, I believe. Ruben didn't-
Yes, it was definitely brought up.
You didn't say something about us, just discuss it, we can't act on it.
I
Yeah, it
watched
was
the meeting.
brought up in discussion, we talked about bringing
Yeah.
it up, but nothing is actually.
So that's why I put it on there, that's the only reason.
I gotta watch it. Yeah, I'll write it down.
And not when we come up at the annual meeting next year.
you know, if the board thought it was appropriate for the administration to do some comparables and enlighten people at the next annual meeting, that's a direction that things could go, but I myself think it's a conflict of interest to discuss it.
Calendar and future agenda items.
I have a question, our strategic planning policy after this meeting.
We're putting together the groups of stakeholders to address each question at this time. We look to meet once in the month of December here as we start going forward.
And I have another question. Sounds weird, but, that telephone system, did anybody ever look into where you could direct call all the parents
With the,
with our current system? I'm thinking of, you dismiss school at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I know they use it in the Valley a lot, I believe. What's the name of what it's
yeah,
called?
I know what you're.
Direct call.
It's just where it sends
Oh.
out a
Alert
message.
now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah, you wouldn't want to overuse it,
right,
but I am thinking of sometimes when it might be.
sure.
We are looking at some software vendors that would do some of those things, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was one of my kids went to Kimberly, and that was a pretty cool thing, with school delays and all kinds of things.
Thank you, those are my two.
Okay.
My two, I,
Do you have anything for the next agenda or for the regular meeting?
One item, the auditors were scheduled to be here tonight, and they asked if they could push that back until the November board meeting. So the audit report will be heard. It's not necessarily an action item, it will be more informational at the November board meeting. And then the investments piece that we had anticipated being in November will come in December now after the audit meeting. Just wanted to highlight the month of December. We are positioned to have 2 meetings. For the past few years, we've only had one. But the calendar does allow this year, the 9th is the second Monday, and the 4th Monday is the 23rd. Are we okay with that schedule?
what is it, the 9th and the?
Oh, we did have one.
In the past, we have.
Yeah, is there anything big going on? No.
Yeah, right, Dan.
I guess to be determined,
We already do have one.
we did
Could
just
we
have
set
one.
it now? It would be-
Technically, no, but it's board's discretion as to what date that would be that, if that's the intent.
It'd be the 9th or the 23rd, would be what you hold.
16.
Would that be okay with the building?
If I remember right, some of our invoices are not available at that time, so the receipt book would be totally complete, and then we catch up in January.
When's the concert?
The what?
Christmas concert.
I said,
Oh.
is that the date?
Those are during the day.
Yeah, with the high school, I believe, is the 13th, the 20th, don't quote me on that. But I believe they're on Fridays.
I would think they'd be as late as the 20th.
Well, why don't we find all those out and come back at the regular meeting?
At the end of the month?
Yeah,
Set-
this is 16th for
It works for me, I'm here.
I have a meeting in Hannibal, I would be able to attend.
Okay.
Or I'd have to postpone it.
What do you get paid from that?
Just so if we would have some potential action items, you know, and I know we always like to discuss and then approve, if there were some pressing issues that may come forward with discussion and recommended action, that's the only pitfall of having only one meeting at that time.
I did just think of something, and this is more of just a request for the website. This past weekend, I was on the mobile website trying to look at calendar, see when kids were off exactly, you know, what dates were on the holidays. I couldn't get to any kind of a calendar.
School calendar?
Yeah, I mean, there was a calendar of events, but it just had, you know, basketball games and stuff like that on there. It didn't say, not on the mobile website. And if I linked to the, you know, full website, like on my phone, I couldn't see anything. It'd just be nice to have stuff like that on there.
I don't want to set the 16th. I don't want to set the 16th for a date that we're going to have some possible band force, whatever. Going on.
We can
So why don't we
verify all
We'll
those
wait till
dates,
the next meeting.
bring it forth at the end of the month.
End of the month.
The other item is the state convention for school boards, district administrators, business officials. I believe it's January 22nd to the 24th. I'm receiving the emails on room reservations already for that. If you do have an interest in attending, and you may have received information through your Weyauwega materials, I'd like to secure those rooms so Dawn can make our arrangements.
Before next meeting?
Just an inquiry if you'd like to attend, you know, that.
But I mean, next meeting is soon enough to say yes?
Oh, yeah, I think we'll be fine there. Sure.
What were the dates?
I think it's 22nd to the 24th. And Debbie, that's the state school board convention in Milwaukee. You know, board members are encouraged to attend if they work on their schedule.
Is it premature, or is there interest in the board in getting a report from the gifted and talented? I've fought for a lot of years to try to get something. I guess I'd like to be curious as how it's going.
I'd like to wait till January.
I'm interested in getting an update.
Sure.
I've been very good.
We've been meeting with Aaliyah periodically as well, and she's been giving us written updates as to the progress and status of where we're going with that as well. And I believe in our recommendation that was part of the review of the program, so just let us know when we can get the program update, absolutely.
That might be good to start thinking of the outside person.
Well, that's my concern.
I think.
And then whether the board is okay if I get the fitness equipment numbers, or prefer that I didn't? Or can I do it on my own?
Is it going to be an issue?
What do you mean? If Neil gets on?
No, I mean, is it going to be an issue? What did you think? I mean, you're going to put a price tag on it? I think, I don't know.
Well, nobody can stop you from doing it on your own.
Right.
That's my opinion.
If you need access to facilities, please work through me and I'll see that you can get it there then, yeah. If that's where the staff there is.
Neil, if you want, I could take them numbers.
Pardon? I think I'm going to get
He doesn't
an
have them, I have
on-site
them.
written appraisal.
Yeah, that's what we have.
Done?
We had it on site, but if you want to get them numbers, please let me know.
The numbers I have are not presentable.
When you get them.
Yes.
Okay.
I make a motion.